are back with our first episode, actually, in this series. So this is, of course, the Dental Practice Launch podcast, where we talk everything about launching and creating your dream dental practice, as well as, a lot of just like startups, do's and don'ts, things people have learned along the way. And in this series, it's going to be a lot of fun because we're going to highlight some unique startups around the country, some of which, we know personally, we work with, some that we don't, but just kind of have seen through social media, and really want to highlight what is making a unique dental practice, in today's world, and what does that look like. And so today I am excited to have our first guest in this series. I'll let her introduce herself first. Many of you may already know her because you may follow her on social media. I wouldn't be a bit surprised, but why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thank you. So I'm Dr. Jen Doe. I created Illume Dental Studio. We're located in Orlando, Florida.
Awesome. And Dr. Doe has created a practice that, just from, if you go and read their reviews, people are, I think, surprised, right? That it's a dental practice and the way that you've designed it. I know that was a lot of, intentional thought that went into it. Before we dive into those, when did Illume Dental Studio open? How long have you been open since we're recording this here in August of 2024?
So we opened about a year and a half ago. So December 2022 was when we opened.
So when you opened, walk us through kind of like the vision for Illume. Did you have the like what it is today? Was that your vision the entire time for the practice, or did it kind of morph into that, as you went along? I'm really curious to kind of hear the origin story of how it became what it is today.
Sure. So I was practicing for about 8.5 years at a corporate office. So because it's corporate, you really don't have control of what happens inside that office. I used to see about 25, 30 patients a day. The front desk was always so busy. There was always 30 to 40 people in the lobby. Everyone's always talking over each other. And by the time that they get from the hustle and bustle of the front desk to my operatory, they're very flustered. So when I thought about building my own office, I wanted something that seemed like a spa. That when you come in there, it seems like it's just you in there, and that we're going to take care of you, and that you are in our hands, and that today's your day, essentially. So that's how Illume started.
And the name Illume, what was it about Illume that was the light bulb, so to speak, and how did you come up with the name? What was the thought behind it? It's a great name. It's a unique name. How did that come about?
One of my really good friends, she made it up. So she was saying, she goes, I really like the name Illume because it sounds like illuminate. In dentistry, you always want a name that makes the patient think that you are brightening their smile, or you are doing something fantastic, and in making them confident in their smile. So she's like, illuminate would be great. She's a dentist as well. So then I asked her, I was like, are you sure? Can I take this name? Because I don't want you to one day regret it and then say like, oh, I wanted that name. She's like, no, I'm going to stay in corporate dentistry. You can take the name. So that's how we got it.
Well, that's a great friend, right? Like be able to give you the idea, your whole brand, and here, you've taken off, with that. I want to ask a little bit before we go into a bunch about Illume Dental Studio. You touched on it a little bit earlier, just about the previous jobs you've worked at and just kind of the hecticness, maybe is one way to describe it. Mm-hmm. Did you always know that you wanted to own a practice, like, through dental school, or was it something that just through your experiences led you to want to go down that path?
I think in high school, when I wanted to become a dentist, I always thought that I would own my own private practice. Somewhere along the lines in dental school, I wouldn't say dental school. I would say dental school, I still wanted my own private practice one day. But I think once I graduated and then I got into the corporate dentistry, I just kind of lost track of what I wanted to do. I was just so used to the the wheel, right? The everyday life of going to work, not having to worry about payroll and staffing or anything. You just clock in, clock out. But then after a while, when you think about just your longevity and how happy the job actually makes you, that's when I started thinking to myself, okay, I think it's time for me to leave. It's time for me to make something of my own. And yeah, that's how Illume started.
And why the startup route? Why not, purchasing a practice? What made you go down the route of, doing a startup?
I think I'm really picky when it comes to aesthetics. I know that if I bought a practice, I would have to do a full renovation. So with that being said, I was like, well, why not do a startup then? So I can actually pick, the tiles, the grout, the ceiling color and everything like that. And just, if I want to go in, I might as well go all in, right?
Yeah. And we are, just for those listening to this, if you're not watching the video, we're going to have some clips and things that go over this so you can actually see inside Dr. Doe's practice. So definitely go to YouTube, check out the video version of this, and a lot of this is really going to connect here. But on that topic of really wanting to just make this your own and not having to come in and build somebody else's practice, and all of that, what were some of the things right out the gate from a design perspective that you knew you wanted to do that would create maybe a different type of atmosphere for the patient versus what they, again, traditionally expect coming into the practice? Were there a few things, whether that's, a comfort menu or, certain aesthetics? I'm curious to hear kind of what were some of the first things you had in mind when you knew, okay, the startup route's where we're going.
Yeah. Some of the deal breakers I had is I wanted an open concept. When you think about a dental office, you always think that it has a small little lobby. There's a wall between the front desk and yourself. You enter a door, and then you're taken to this other small little room where you sit there and you wait quietly until the doctor comes in. With me in my office, I wanted to have something that was an open concept. When you walk in, you're like, wow, look at this space. Look how big it is. Look how bright it is. And it smells so good. I wanted something to be inviting. We also, like you mentioned before, we have the spa menu. What we do is we have digital forms, so patients will fill out their spa menu before they even come in. So that is one thing that makes them have that wow factor even before they see our space. So the spa menu will say things like, how would you like for us to curate your room before you come in? And it will say things like, would you like to have sparkling water, coffee, tea? You want a mocktail? We have mimosas, we have bellinis, we have 0% beer. You can pick it, anything you want. We also have things like a cooling neck pillow, blankets, a massage eye mask or a heated eye mask, earplugs. We also have noise canceling headphones, and we have Zoom TVs as well. So right off the bat, when you're reading all these things, you're like, holy moly, this is not the typical dental office that I'm used to going to. So they get excited with that. They look at it and they get to pick everything that they want. And what I really like is for them to actually come inside the office and just get that, holy moly, look at this. I wasn't expecting this. And I think that just makes my day.
Well, and those things that you're doing, those extra touch points, I always tell people, no matter, what business you're in kind of the customer service industry, and people, it's been common, people would say in dentistry, we're not in teeth business, we're in the people business. And those are extra touch points there that you're talking about that make that, memorable. Obviously, though, it requires additional planning and some additional, work up front. What would you say has been, people think of the ROI on this or the ROI on the time that it takes to do all of these things. Would you say that getting to the point that you're at now, prepping, looking over those forms, making sure that you have the right comfort menu items for the patient, has that paid off for you? And have you gotten feedback from patients on, what their feedback's been on, getting, something like that personalization?
Yeah, 100%. I feel that once patients come in and they get that that surprise, they go home, they tell all their friends. They are booking their appointment for their boyfriend, they're booking their appointment for their sister. So it's definitely worth it. And also, we get a lot of patients that will take pictures of the spa menu or the TV when they walk in. It says, "Welcome, Samantha. This week was prepared just for you." They love that, and they put it on Instagram, and that's when their friends will go on social media and go, "What is that? Where are you at? And why is your name on the wall?" So that gets our name out there. So it's definitely worth the ROI, even if it takes about, I mean, honestly, it doesn't take that long to set up a room because we have the spa menus that is imported into our open dental. It just takes one click for you to see the list of the things that they picked. And from there, we have it all designated inside our supply room. We just come, we bring that into the room. So it takes maybe like 2 minutes of our time, but it makes such a big difference in the patient's experience.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And I think that in this world that we're in of, more, corporate dentistry and big DSOs, it's like the, small business, the local, owned practice, that's how you stand out. And I think that we're getting to a point too, where things have been so automated for us as a society that people are craving some of that personalization, that human connection. I think we're definitely seeing that, and that's a great way right out the gates to start to build that and show people, hey, this is how we're different. One thing is to kind of follow up on that is, you've had such great feedback in the year and a half that you've been open, in the form of reviews, in the form of your social media presence, and all of these things. But I do want to go to the social media side really quickly. If you don't already, go to Instagram, Facebook, but look up Illume Dental Studio. Okay, everybody needs to do this. We'll plug it in the show notes here as well. Was social media always your thing? Have you delegated this and somebody else is coming up with these ideas? You got to walk us through how you've come up with the content that you create, because it's super engaging and it's built this massive following. When did it start? Was it before opening? And, just what has that been like, and kind of diving in and having fun with the content that you've been creating?
Well, thank you so much for saying that, because I worked really hard on it. We started before we opened. I think I started, I would say, a year beforehand. So I was up, even though I was really scared to do it because I was in corporate dentistry, I didn't want my boss to see it and then lose my job. But at the end of the day, when it's about your future, you just got to go for it. You got to promote yourself. You got to put yourself out there just so that people know that you're coming up, right? Like I said, I started a year before, and then at first I wanted like a very luxury type of social media, showcasing how beautiful our office was and all the spa amenities. But I found that putting funny content out there gets more people talking about it. So maybe about 3 or 4 months ago was when we started going, okay, we're just gonna flip the script. We're just gonna do something totally different. So I just started looking. I spend all day on social media, so I'm always scrolling. I'm always going, okay, what's funny? And then once I find things that are funny, I'll just save it. And from there, I'll come up to my staff members and say, okay, are you guys willing to do this? Are you guys willing to do this? We have like 10 minutes. Let's just do this really quick. So then once we film it, I will go ahead and edit it, and then I'll upload it the same day. Sometimes when we have let's say an hour or so with no patients, that's like the perfect time for us to actually shoot about 15 reels. And then from there, I'll just edit all of them, and then I will schedule all of them to come out at a certain time every single day.
So you have a plan then going into it, like, hey, we're going to do something like this. And do you usually do like a bulk, like shoot a bunch of them at the same time, or try to, or is it just...
Try to, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on the day. So I would say if we're slow, then I'll try to shoot about, I would say like 5 to 10 of them. But if it's slow and we have like only 10 minutes, I'm like, hey guys, can we just do this one really quick? Just like 2 minutes. And then I'll just shoot the content and then edit it when I'm either at home or during lunch break. And then I'll upload it around like 5 o'clock.
That's great. And we're, again, for those watching, you'll see we're going to be putting some of the clips over this so you can see, some of the content here, which is just hilarious. And with that, the team, you mentioned the team earlier and be like, hey, are you willing to do this? How did you get the team, to buy into it? Is it just a matter of kind of knowing, having the right personalities on the team, knowing kind of who would maybe be comfortable with what? Because I feel like that's maybe the biggest hiccup that gets some people stops them from doing this, is they're like, hey, I would love to do something like this, but I don't think my team would, be down with it. So how did you, I guess, create that, culture in the office? And now it seems like people probably just have a blast with it, but starting out, was it difficult?
I wouldn't say that it was difficult, because I feel like I have really outgoing staff members. They love to dance, they love to laugh. So, and then I find that when they find me reels that they like and they get to act it out, it's even funner. So not only we get our content out there, we're building just team bonding between each other. So it makes it a really fun experience.
And so the team that you have, do they ever come to you and be like, hey, I've got this idea, we got to try this, and you're like, oh wow? Or are you the primary content idea creator? What's that like?
I mean, they always shoot me reels, and then from there I'm like, I don't know, I like that, or like, oh, okay, we can do that, or we're like, oh, definitely, that's so freaking funny, we're gonna definitely do that.
And earlier you mentioned you edit them. What software or tool do you use to edit the reels, or do you use a tool?
So I heard that Instagram will favor reels that are edited in the Instagram app. So I try best to do everything on Instagram, but sometimes if I have to, I'll go in CapCut.
CapCut, okay. And that's a common one that we hear too, like when people get a little bit more in-depth with some of their edits. CapCut is a common one. I agree though. Instagram, Facebook's the same way. They like for you to do things natively within the platform, when it can be done. Even like things simple, for those listening out there, like cross-posting and using certain apps to cross-post sometimes can give you, less reach on one platform or the other. So that's really interesting. Had you done like that type of social media, like, trends and things like that before being a practice owner, like when you were an associate, or was this like all new to you as far as this style?
Yeah, it was all new, just because, I mean, as an associate, I didn't really have to brand myself. It wasn't until I opened up the office, I was like, oh my God, this is my biggest fear, that I have to put my face on camera. I'm just like a very shy person. So for me to even do this podcast, I was so nervous about. So when it comes down to reels, I'm like, oh my God, okay. So I just gotta breathe. I just gotta film this and make it funny, and it's just edit it and put it on social media, because at the end of the day, people like to see your face on there, and they like to see you talking, and they like to interact with you. So yeah, I mean, I do it because I had to, but then I fell in love with it.
See, and watching those, you would never guess that you are kind of introverted or would be, uncomfortable being on camera, doing those things.
Yeah.
Like you would never guess that seeing it. So that's so funny, even for me, to hear as we're doing this. But you're right. It's something where something new is always uncomfortable at first, until you just get reps in and you do it over and over. And like you said, now it's become something that's kind of a joy of your practice. And I imagine the patients, who go in and follow you, do you ever get patients who mention something at their appointment or say something? Because, I mean, it's just hilarious. And I don't think patients are used to seeing that out of their dentist.
I mean, people say it all the time. We had a patient just last week that he was telling another person, he's like, I never realized a dental office could be so funny. Sometimes I catch myself looking at our reels. He goes, sometimes I catch myself watching their reels, and then all of a sudden it's an hour later, and I'm still watching them just because they're just so funny. So yeah, I mean, stuff like that, when people say it just makes me so happy, and it makes me go, okay, I want to post some more, and hopefully it'll gain more people to watch our reels.
Yeah. And what you're doing too, and for those listening out there, if you're thinking about trying to get more involved with your social media, it's like it's really relationship building and trust building, at the end of the day. And you're not going to, post 2 or 3 things and then expect a bunch of patients to come in from that. It's kind of the long-term nurture of those patients. And I always tell people, it's like, it's like a TV show. It's like, if you've watched a TV show, The Office, for example, many of us, are obsessed with The Office. It's like after a while, like you feel like you get to know the characters, you get to know the people. And the same thing with social media. It's like if you're consistently posting funny things, whatever it is, it doesn't even just have to be funny, but people then start to feel like they know you more, even though, they're just watching your videos. So it's a really fascinating look, I guess, at the human psychology and what that does. But you're right. I mean, huge impact.
I totally agree with that, because I feel like patients will come in and they'll say, like, I feel like I already know you. I already know that, Anna is like the funny dancer and Lonnie is a sassy one. And then, so I love that, because it is true. Like, everything that we're acting, all the roles that we play are essentially us. So yeah, I think it's hilarious. We also have patients that come in and they'll ask us, like, hey, can I be a part of one of your reels? I'm like, hell yeah, you can.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. When you start getting people like getting featured, then, requesting to be featured, that's when okay, we're onto something here. Something is working. So we've talked a lot about like kind of the some of the fun things there. And I always like to talk about, for people that are listening to this, and many people are considering a startup or a practice acquisition who listen to this. It's like, here's kind of the, some of the things in the first year and a half in your case that have been, super rewarding about being a practice owner. And then here are a couple things. It's like, the challenges, right? Because it is an adjustment and you're still very early off in this. So let's start with the challenges first, because I like to end on the most positive note. But for somebody looking at going from maybe associate, after years, or some people even go relatively soon out of dental school, but are looking into practice ownership, whether that's an acquisition, whether that's a startup, what's 1 or 2 things that maybe you wish you could have gone back and told yourself, gave yourself a heads up, or, hey, this is a couple of challenges you might face as, a new practice owner. What would 1 or 2 of those things be?
I think I would tell myself to not wait. I waited about 8.5 years before I started the process. And now looking back, I'm like, dang, all those years I could have had my dream already, but instead I had that fear. When you're in a corporate office, they always feed you that fear of, hey, the grass is not green on the other side. You have it so good here. You don't have to worry about supplies. You don't have to worry about payroll. You don't have to worry about hiring and firing. Why would you leave that? And I fell into it, it was very comfortable for me for a very long time. And I felt that those years, I wouldn't say stolen from me, but I definitely got my experience, and I should have left earlier. And I wish that if I could go back in time, I would just say, don't let those fears, don't let other people influence your life. You should go for it. If that's your dream, you have to just take the leap, because no matter what, you're always going to have obstacles. You're always going to have an excuse of why you can't do it at the moment. But when you think about it, there's always going to be an excuse, right? You just gotta do it.
No, that's a great piece of advice. I think sometimes too, we worry, like maybe we don't have confidence in ourselves, right? It's like, oh, well, if they're telling me this, it's like, maybe they're right. They probably know more than I do. But at the end of the day, I think it's, anybody can do anything that they really put their mind to. And for those who listen to this, if you're, you've gone through dental school, you've done all of that, the training, everything, it's like, you can do it, right? You had to put your mind to that and you were able to accomplish it. So whatever it is in life, I think that's really sound advice that people, should take advantage of and hear more of. And then the other side of it too is just with, the process of a startup, is there something specific that, you would share with people considering the startup route, as far as, when to start putting yourself out there, whether it's like you talked about, even doing social media early on, or whether it's hiring advice or when to hire? Like what was one of those lessons that you kind of learned along the way that you would share with somebody considering going that route?
I felt like I made a lot of mistakes, so I have a lot of advice. So my advice is to take your time with looking at places and then really knowing who you're getting in bed with as far as your landlord. Because you have to make sure that you're paying for a really good lawyer to read your lease, because if you don't, you might get trapped into something that you really didn't want to be trapped in. And then I would also say start your marketing very early as well. We started talking to someone who built our website. The moment that I knew my name was when we signed the lease. And then from there, we just got our website done. We got our logo done. So that at that point, I was like, okay, so since I have my logo, I have my name, let's start printing shirts. Let's start printing bags. Let's put our name everywhere. And then that's when I started doing ground marketing as well. Because you gotta put your name out there, especially if you don't have a building with your logo, no one's gonna know that you're gonna be there. So I put myself out there to talk to people in the neighborhood, find out what kind of events they had. And luckily with our neighborhood, they had a lot of community events. They have what's called First Fridays, Saturday markets. They have this thing called Taste of Baldwin Park. So even though initially it was a lot of money for me to put out there, because like, let's say tabling could be like $600 and you're giving away free swag and that's like $300. And in the very beginning, you think to yourself, like, that's a lot of money for someone that isn't making any money, right? But you just got to do it because that's how you get your name out there. So we started the ground marketing process a year, I would say, let's say 8 months before we even opened. So that's how we got a whole list of patients to sign up their name, their email. And from there, that's when I started emailing them saying, hey, we're going to be open at this time period. We're not too sure yet, but like maybe, so we're constantly in the back of their mind. And I also would say staffing. It's a big deal as well. You got to start early and you got to pick the right people. I think with us, because we had so many delays, that I had a good bunch of people to start out, but because we had delays, they started dropping off. Then I started panicking and I started grabbing like old assistants and old staff members from my previous office. Like, can you just do me a favor for 2 weeks or whatever the case it was? So I think that was a huge headache as well. So you just gotta make sure that you are picking the right people because that's the face of your office. You gotta make sure that they align with your views and they are okay with putting in that sweat for you.
100%. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. And I think the way that you build a good team is just making sure that they know that you value them. I think that a lot of times whenever I hire staff members, they say to me like, oh yeah, my old boss didn't really care about me. I would present them this problem and they're always like, well, tough luck. So I think from hearing them and just listening into their problems at their previous office, I made sure that they weren't going to have that problem in our own office. My biggest thing that I'm proud of my office is that we get along so well. And I think it's because we try to nip in the bud whenever there is a conflict. We're like, okay, let's sit down, let's talk about it. We're too small of an office to sit here and argue and talk behind each other's back. Let's just deal with it now so we can resolve like a family and then be okay for tomorrow. And I think they really appreciate that we're very open and that they're able to tell me anything that bothers them and for me to be able to try to fix it for them immediately.
Yeah, that's I think a super like freeing feeling for a team member as well as for you. And it's something that people need to realize, if you've never had to be in a leadership, position before, it's like you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn things along the way. And I think leadership is one of those skills that is, you're always learning, right? It's like you'll never be 100% prepared to hire a team, lead that team. To your point earlier, I think there's many people that maybe have felt they weren't appreciated by their boss, and maybe their boss really did appreciate them, but they were just so caught up in the day-to-day busy that they forgot to really tell them or show them how they, really do appreciate them. So I think that's a really important insight for people to remember as you're going into practice ownership. Just as we wrap up here, what's been, to those listening so far, again, you're a year and a half open now, so still early in the process, what's been the most rewarding part of owning your practice, building your team? Like what's that been for you?
I think the most rewarding thing that I've seen is just having staff members that are happy coming into work. I feel that that's a big, I did something right.
Yeah, that's special. But when you create that, and then your team knows, too. It's not just you and your life; it's their life, and that's amazing. And that's something many people don't get a chance to do unless you take that chance and realize it's not all about you, right? It's about others that you build yourself around. So that's special. I appreciate you sharing that. As kind of a final fun question here that I always like to kind of end on, for those listening to this right now, if there was one biggest piece of advice you would give a new dentist starting out, maybe an associate dentist, or maybe practice ownership's in their, dream one day, or maybe it's not, but just a young clinician, what would be your advice to them after, practicing now for, about a decade?
I would say always believe in yourself, because there's always going to be people that are going to be like, oh, well, she's not doing this. Like, let's say in my practice, I like to do cosmetic dentistry. I like to do Botox and fillers. I think people that are always looking, and if they're jealous, they're always going to say something mean, right? They're going to be like, well, she's not placing implants. She's not doing this and stuff. And when it gets back to you, it gets in your head. You start to think to yourself, oh, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I'm not a good enough dentist. But at the end of the day, you just have to keep believing in yourself, and know that you'll eventually get there. And you can take as much time as you want, because this is your timeline. It's no one else's timeline. So you just have to be proud of where you've come and where you're going to go.
Yep. Great way to end this episode. And for those who are wanting to find you online, follow the practice on Instagram, go ahead and share with us your Instagram handle, how they can find you.
Yep. It is Illume Dental Studio.
Awesome. And we will have, again, that plugged into the show notes below, so you'll be able to click on that directly and go check out their page. But I highly recommend it. They're a great follow if you just want to have some, laughs and some fun, and also get some ideas, for maybe some of the content that you could be producing as well. I highly suggest following them. But Dr. Do, thank you so much for joining us, really sharing kind of your vision, your story for your startup practice. And we know you're going to do great things, and thanks for joining me.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.